And I'd like to welcome you to the Poverty and Homelessness Board Executive Committee meeting for January 16th, 2025. My name is Sean Murphy, and I am the chair of the Poverty and Homelessness Board. And the executive committee consists of 5 members and is currently made up of myself, Vice Chair Commissioner Pat Farr, who is running late but will be here, Mayor Van Gordon, and Matthias Smith, who is sitting to my left. And I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Mayor Knutson, who is joining us and replacing Mayor Venice on the Poverty and Homelessness Board.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Public comment is available for any member of the general public during the Poverty and Homelessness Board regular meetings. The next regular meeting is on February 20th in Harris Hall and virtually from noon to 1:30 p.m. In addition, there are a number of committees where individuals may get further involved. During this executive committee meeting, those who are invited to engage are the PHB executive member meetings only, and others are welcome to observe. As chair, it is my role to foster a meeting culture that helps all members feel welcome and heard, in addition to valuing the experience of all with lived expertise. Members and stakeholders are encouraged to reference the PHB meeting group agreements you have signed and to collectively help uphold the agreements. Today, our agenda includes the executive, well, I kind of did the introduction. But we will have open for public comment, approve the consent agenda, which we have the minutes from the September 19th executive committee meeting, the December 2024 statement of revenue and expenditures in the financial dashboard, and accept the all-in financial dashboard. Then Kate will be doing a fiscal year 2026 funding insights discussion, and the minute view homelessness. Give me the D demonstration project. Thank you very much. With Kirsten London, she'll give us have a discussion on that. Then Commissioner Farr, and I think we'll also have some updates from Mayor Knutson in regards to the sanctuary status for the county, and then some specifics for Eugene. James will give an update on the strategic plan and next steps, jurisdictional updates if needed, and then the February draft agenda and wrap up. Perfect timing.
Doesn't seem me here.
And so with that, can we get a motion to approve the consent?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. You're going to have this.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
You just formalized our section.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that after this one before we get going. All right. Well, let's see, since there's 3 of us. Mayor Van Gordon, you are there. Okay. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And I do just want to update that Mayor Van Gordon has joined us. And before I turn it over to public comment, also that we are now taking nominations for the chair and vice chair for the Poverty and Homelessness Board. I do believe from my email chain that Commissioner Farr has agreed to stay on if the board so chooses, and I am as well. However, if we do have other folks who are interested, James, tell them how they can nominate
Yeah,
or
you
apply.
can reach out to me via email, but let's say by the end of January, if you have folks that you want to nominate. And we will process them accordingly.
All right. And with that, we will move forward with, do we have anyone in for public comment?
Oh,
Go ahead, Chris.
Yes.
Chris, it shows you as mute. It's weird. I can hear you for a second, but then it goes out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I
Thank
was
you.
curious, are we doing in the past, or are we just doing one chair, one vice chair?
One chair, two vice chairs.
I'd like to nominate Heather Quas-Anza for vice chair of homelessness.
Thanks. I will
Thank
note
you.
that.
Was not expecting that, but thank you very much, Chris, for your vote of confidence.
Anything else from public comment?
Do nominations need a second?
Oh, no, because we don't
This
vote
is-
on it actually until February is when
Thank
we'll
you,
bring it
Chair.
up, the folks who've been nominated. Yeah. Okay. With that, thanks for public comment. And looks like that puts Kate on.
Sure, thank you. So, the opportunity I have today is to share some funding insights regarding state and federal funding sources that currently flow through the county. And what we're looking at is dollars that would be received to be used for the fiscal year of July 1, 2025 through June 30 of 2026. So this upcoming fiscal year. And I want to recognize that I do not have an ability to predict the future, as do, none of us, I presume. And what I have done is utilized the current governor's budget, looked at kind of the way that funding has historically ebbed and flowed, conversations that have occurred, a number of documents that have been shared. And that is how I've arrived at what it is that I am sharing today. I want to recognize that it may be correct or it may not be. And it is just, the collection of information that's been gathered to this point. And because we will not know our actual funding realities, sometimes until the very end of the state legislative session, or, whenever at the federal level, just with the continuing resolutions, it also means that the county has to function with its best assumptions as we're planning for the next fiscal year. And so I want to share the best assumptions that the county has today. You can go 2 slides forward. So firstly, looking at federal funding, the funding source where we are likely going to experience the greatest loss is Community Service Block Grant, especially for this upcoming fiscal year. The CSBG fund was developed as a part of LBJ's Great Society and the War on Poverty, and has very much been a pinnacle of the work of Democrats historically. And as a result, it has been a funding source that has been targeted recently with Republican legislators at the federal level. And fortunately, we've not seen significant reductions, but we also haven't seen great increases. And as we look toward the Trump administration, we are expecting that CSBG will be one of the first funding sources that is fully cut. And in fact, I just received a document that proposes how the new administration might cover tax cuts and border support. And the community service block grant is on here to be fully eliminated. And so right now, Lane County receives about $300,000, which isn't enormous. And it is one of the most flexible funding sources that we have, particularly for programs that work to reduce the number of people who are in poverty. And so want to share that right off the bat. That's the worst news that I have at this point. But it is something that we're going to be watching very closely. And we do anticipate that the action of eliminating CSBG will probably happen within the early weeks of the new administration. When it comes to the continuum of care funds, we're fortunate in that there was an application that Lane County submitted back in, would have been October of 2024, in order to receive funding for the next 2 years. And so what that means is that the dollars are already identified to be able to support that application. And so while in the future, there could be reductions with continuum of care funds, we don't expect that to occur in this next fiscal year. And so we expect those dollars to remain stagnant. And potentially we applied for more than what we're receiving now. And so we should learn how we did on the grant in the next month or two. Regarding community development block grant funds, Lane County receives those from our City of Springfield and Eugene partners. And we are predicting a small reduction of about 15%. At the federal level, it's expected that it might remain stable, but then how it shakes out across the nation often then leads to a reduction of overall funding to the cities, which then could potentially lead to the same amount of funding reduction to the county. Regarding home tenant-based rental assistance, and that flows from the federal government to OHCS, Oregon Housing and Community Services, to Lane County. We're also expecting a reduction in those funds. Right now, they're primarily used for rent assistance outside of Springfield and the City of Eugene because they receive their own allocation. Regarding emergency solutions grant, we also expect about a 20% reduction with those funds. And again, it's that there likely won't be an increase at the federal level, but there are more jurisdictions across the nation who are receiving ESG funds. And so it just equates to a small reduction across the board. Next slide. So when we're looking at Oregon state funding, so those dollars that start at the state, it includes the EHA, or Emergency Housing Assistance Fund, and we're expecting stable funding there, as well as for the Housing Stabilization Program, which is through the Department of Human Services. For the State Homelessness Assistance Program, also expecting stable funds. And then for the executive order funding and the operational support for shelter dollars, also expecting those funds to be stable. We're hearing from the governor regarding her commitment to supporting the infrastructure that's been built already through the executive order, and particularly the shelter beds that have been created or improved through the executive order, and that she's very committed to sustaining those shelter beds that have already received funding. And then lastly, expecting stable funding for the Oregon Rehousing Initiative, which is utilized for diversion assistance. Next slide. ORDAP, the Oregon Eviction Diversion and Prevention Program, is for rent assistance. And there, reading some tea leaves at the state level, there is an interest among some legislators to reduce the amount of ORDAP funding that exists today, primarily because of the HRSN housing benefit, and that created a pathway that is brand new for community members, those who are on Medicaid, to receive rent assistance. And so the theory that I am hearing is that there is less of a need for other sources of rent assistance as a result of the HRSN housing benefit. And so I do expect that we'll see a reduction in the allocation of rent assistance that we're receiving now through the executive order. And then lastly, the long-term rent assistance program. Those of you who are familiar with the executive order know that there was a pause recently with the long-term rent assistance. And now those dollars are flowing again. What we expect is that we will get enough money to support those who are currently in the program. And so what is very important is that as a community, we make sure that we are enrolling the maximum number of people that the funding allows, so that we fully spend out those dollars by the end of this fiscal year. And then what we would expect is similar amount of dollars to continue to support those individuals with rent assistance into the next fiscal year. Where we would see fewer dollars is if we leave money on the table. And agencies are not spending out their contracts. Then the state would theorize those dollars aren't needed, and they would say you were able to house this many people with a smaller amount of funds, and those would be the amount of funds that we're going to give you. And so we just want to be really conscientious, and that's a fact for all the programs, in that our agencies are spending out the dollars that they're allocated, and certainly have conversations with your county contacts if that is going to be a challenge. The highlight, the silver lining with all of this is that the HRSN housing and outreach and nutritional benefits, climate resiliency benefits are all up and running. And that has created additional funding, additional resources for our community. And I know there are many agencies who are already providing many of these benefits, and my hope is that that's helped with agencies' ability to support community needs. My encouragement is, if you're an agency that hasn't looked into whether the HRSN benefits might be an option, to do that, because that's where there are dollars available to be able to support community members, and to potentially be able to fill in some of the gaps that might be left, especially as we're thinking about the funding reductions at the federal level. And so definitely engage. OHA is a great partner. The coordinated care organizations, Trillium and Pacific Source are excellent partners. And then we have agencies locally that are already doing the HRSN benefits, and, you know, the county, we're happy to connect you with those who are doing that. But the HRSN is absolutely the bright spot that we have currently. Next slide. So just to underscore the key takeaways, we are going to see a reduction in the amount of money that we have available for poverty reduction. And that is unfortunate, to say the least. We know that not only is the Community Service Block Grant really key to this work, but so is the Human Services Commission dollars. And at this point, we're not clear on either what Lane County may be putting into the pot, as well as City of Eugene and City of Springfield. And so we'll continue to work to gain more clarity there. But the loss of CSBG only highlights the importance and the enormous value of the Human Services Commission dollars and the flexibility that it brings to the table. We also know that the governor's budget very much holds our state funding stable. And so as the legislative session is moving forward, advocacy to continue to see her budget suggestions move forward, or, advocacy asking for more money will help to make sure that the programming that exists remains funded. And to highlight, this could all change tomorrow. Again, I cannot see the future, and especially with a legislative session, things can change very quickly. But at this point, this is what is on the radar of Human Services Division at this point in time. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. So with the federal funds, do you know how quickly they will notify us, and like what is our time would we have enough time to actually come up with alternative plans for the cut of those funds, or how does that work? So for providers, how would that happen?
Yeah.
Because I know the new administration starts in, I think, 4 days. So.
Yeah, so we have a continuing resolution at the federal level through March. And there are, community service block grants in that continuing resolution. There is a potential that it could end come, the future, either budget or if there's another continuing resolution. And so not sure how clear it will be as to when that might happen. We, the county, work to try to support agencies as we can, especially when there's an unexpected challenge in the middle of a fiscal year. And so, we'll scramble to see what we can do to address that. And the significant kind of loss of funding would be felt in the new fiscal year, in that through RFPs and budget discussions with agencies, there might be fewer dollars available in the next fiscal year.
So we'll know pretty soon, and it will be July with the new fiscal budget starting July. So July is when we will start to feel it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me also say with the state, we may not know until June 30 at 10:55 p.m. I've been there. I'm sure many of you have as well. And so that is a risk. And we can see, as bills start to work through committees and, through the House and Senate, you can start to follow like, okay, we might be able to see what the budgets are looking like as they move forward. So we'll all learn together.
That's why I asked about the feds, because I know with the state, it's kind of, we're making A, B, C, D, E, F, G plans as things change through legislation.
Yes.
But I just have a couple more then. it turned over, sorry. And then with the state funds, because I know we kind of track how they're being spent, will we have the ability, like we've had in the past, to kind of move money around or shift it to other places to make sure that we try to get it all spent by the contractor, the year end, so that it could be renewed?
Yeah, we'll do what we can, and there's, there's the opportunity at the agency level where you could consider, line item movements across programming. And that would be a request to your county staff. And then there's also the county moving between agencies to work to get money spent, and we'll absolutely do what we can in that regard as well. And it's also why you'll likely start to get questions soon as we're planning for the end of this fiscal year.
And I see there's,
Chris, I think, was first.
yeah, I saw, was Chris first?
He had put Q in the chat first. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
We're gonna have executive committee members
Yes.
ask questions.
So, then the other piece, and I know there is somebody, I'm pretty sure I saw somebody from the CCOs in there, so correct me if I'm wrong. But right now, the community benefits grants for the support of HRSN services, that is reopened in January, right? So agencies that are interested in building capacity, I thought at some point they said they were gonna have a second round of grant funding available in January. And if I am wrong, oh, there's Catherine. Catherine can correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll go pull the timeline. I think it opens up soon, but similar to 24, funds are not going to be actually distributed until like October or something. But let me go see if I can find a snapshot of the timeline.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Hey, answer the other question.
The question, do we have any updates on the proposed bill, RE alternative shelter approval and funding? Currently, the bill is in committee that would expand the funding scope for emergency shelter. And so the Housing and Homelessness Committee in the House is going to be the vehicle to move that forward.
And before we move it, because Chris, I know you have your hand up, I'm gonna ask if you're not on the executive committee, and Chris, I'll let you ask your question. But if you can put your comments in the K, because we are looking at those and I am paying attention to them, but it makes it easier so I don't have to track whether a hand is up or whether a question is being asked.
Yes, Madam Chair. So does that mean wait and ask?
No, I'm saying go ahead and ask your question now, but I'm just saying as we move forward, if people can type it, because then
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
try to catch up to make sure we try to answer what's being asked.
Yes, ma'am. And this was in part with the strategic plan because of the fact that we are dealing with harder times that many of the providers and lived experience people have been warning about for several years. But there are spin down issues, both on interpretation of contracts as well as allocations. As someone who was displaced during the ice storm, and I now pay the same amount for 8 times less space, I now live in a tiny home. And so that said, the trouble is real. My question is, in the past, we've been told by both federal trainers and by some of the local state providers and trainers that if municipalities were asking for monies on specific things in coordination with the strategic plan, we'd be better suited and have fewer strings attached in some situations. Is there any indication that we will be advising as the PHB for more municipal responsibility and accountability on these types of things?
So that part we'll have Brittany back in February as we're going over the strategic plan, Chris. And so we'll have the board and we'll be talking about that as we're going through the strategic plan, the pieces, if there's something missing in Brittany's strategic plan. that if we would want to add it, that's where we would add that piece.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm. Now I've got 2 more slides. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sure. So I just want to, go ahead to the next slide. I want to share that, we have currently an open application for Poverty and Homelessness Board members. And it includes a sector seat, a seat for someone with lived expertise, and then a seat for someone who is elected in a rural community, so outside of Eugene and Springfield metro area. Those applications are due January 31st, and we do have a number of them. I wanted to bring this up because we are looking for 3 to 4 Poverty and Homelessness Board members to vet the candidates and make a recommendation to the PHB. And so if it's something you're interested in, please let me know by January 27th. Thank you. And then one other point I wanted to share is Lane County, as a government, is currently starting their strategic planning process and has released a survey for those residing in Lane County. And so wanted to make sure everyone knew that. The link is in front of you and the deadline is January 31st. I encourage everyone to fill that out if you're interested.
Could that link be sent out to that group?
Yes, I'll send it out as follow-up.
And then Commissioner Barr had a.
Thank you, Chair. Just in general response to Chris's question, you know, the county is an arm of state government. Municipalities are not. And we have statutory obligations that are required by state government and federal government that municipalities do not. So anytime funding is diverted from county to municipalities directly, then we are even more being underfunded on requirements that are placed upon us by the state. And once again, we are an arm. The county is, we all here sitting here from the county, we're an arm of the state government.
Do we have anything else on that? Or are we ready to-
No, I'm
All right. Thank you, Kate.
Be the shares first slide.
Yeah, but could I run the slides?
I can bring this over to you. Let me just go share.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten London. My pronouns are she, her, and I work in the Housing and Community Action Office as a program services coordinator, specifically in youth and young adult homelessness systems improvement. So a major part of that job is the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of the work that we have done and how we are facing forward in 2025. I did want to do some grounding work because for some folks, this is going to be very familiar information. And for other folks, this is going to be brand new. In the fall of 2021, Lane County was awarded $3.6 million in our efforts to end youth and young adult homelessness. And through those efforts, we created a 5-year coordinated community plan. We stood up projects that include joint housing, a host home project, and outreach. We stood up a county youth and young adult advisory council. And we just completed the first 2 years of funding for those projects specifically. YHTP requires above all, that there are youth and young adult lived experience engagement, and that those folks are key decision makers in everything that we do. All of our changes to our projects and the work have to be approved by our YHTP Action Council, and that funds must be used to support folks under the age of 25. Essentially, all of our projects are guided by youth choice. And my other bullet point is just talking about the coordinated community plan and our efforts surrounding that, and how those funds are used to support that work. The great thing about YHTP has allowed us to expand our eligibility. So prior to receiving those funding, young adults aged out of services when they turn 22. We have been able to expand that through the age of 24. We also have expanded the definitions of homelessness that we're allowed to serve. The key one to that is the imminent risk. So anybody who is within 2 weeks of losing their housing are eligible for our housing projects through our coordinated entry system. We have also added some beds in our community. So we added approximately 70 joint transitional housing, rapid rehousing projects. Also, just want to name we have 2 of those projects. Those are first of a kind for the county. We created a host home project, also first of its kind for our county, and then outreach with a vision towards supporting our youth and young adults in rural communities. That slide. This information is it's old as of the beginning of December, but I do think it's such a great snapshot of who we are seeing accessing our front door assessment. One of the things that we're working really diligently on is creating a youth and young adult front door assessment tool that will differ from the adult tool. And we're using this data to help us in terms of knowing what vulnerabilities we're going to prioritize on that tool, and what we should weight in those vulnerabilities. So I am really proud of the work that we're doing in terms of looking at the data and letting that impact our decisions and how we move forward. I think this is also doing a great snapshot of saying we are showing that we're seeing the most of our young people coming from Eugene, and then Springfield is, a distant far out, including Cottage Grove and Veneta. There's still work to be done, especially in the Siusla area and obviously in Oak Ridge as well. And then also just host homes. To me, that's super interesting that we have about a 50-50 split on the youth saying whether they would be willing to go into host home or not. Our coordinated community plan is that 5-year effort, and it came together through a planning process that included youth and young adult lived experience, provider voice, and community stakeholders. Our coordinated community plan has 6 goals and 33 action steps. There are some communities that have 1 goal and 3 action steps. So we have a really ambitious plan that we put into place, and that plan is driving the work that we're doing today. It essentially took a look at our systems, our gaps in our systems, and then created those action steps that need to be taken to help eliminate those gaps. This is information to some folks they already saw when I presented earlier this year at the Board of County Commissioners. But in the first year of our coordinated community plan efforts, we did a great job of elevating youth and young adults with lived experience, building out those outreach teams. We are working hard on a youth-specific point in time count. We actually have one coming up on January 30th. Where we've been able to pull in a lot of key service providers in a resource fair here locally. And then we have efforts also based out in Siusla. So looking at just creating events that will draw folks in to make sure that we're getting the most accurate count. We've also expanded our front door assessors, including out at Lane Community College. It has been a focus point of our coordinated community plan is to build those relationships, especially with secondary and education institutes, to ensure that there is a gateway and support for folks exiting high school and their GED programs, and that they have that support so they can be successful in their higher education. Moving forward, we have implemented a case conferencing. So that's where service providers come together every other week to discuss youth and young adults on the Youth and Young Adult Centralized Wait List. It is a very collaborative space and something that we worked really hard to build out. And I think we're doing a great job of supporting folks on the centralized wait list to ensure that they're being referred to the projects that best fit their needs and what they ultimately want to see happen with the next steps in their world. I talked about the youth-specific front door assessment tool. We are just moving through the creation of the vulnerability questions on that. The next goal is to figure out how to create a conversion tool so that young adults, specifically those folks from the ages of 18 to 24, only have to do one front door assessment, and then their score can get converted and they can get placed on the adult centralized wait list. So that's our next step that we have to figure out. Diversifying access points for coordinated entry. We actually have a local service provider who's not contracted with the county, but has taken it upon themselves to become front door assessors. And they rove throughout the county and meet young adults and youth where they're at so they can get that front door assessment completed. I've talked about the tracking of the data and identifying trends. And that continues to be a focus point of the work group that is a subcommittee of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and continues to inform our work. And then we are finding ways to leverage youth and young adult voice through our own advisory council, but also we are leaning pretty heavily on other advisory councils in the county to help us, especially on those really big decisions where we want to have a lot of eyes on it. And then in fall of 2024, our work group came together and looked at the coordinated community plan to assess what we wanted to spend 2025 really focused on. That group decided that we are going to focus on workforce development. So we are kicking that off this month. Yeah, we hope to have processes figured out by this time next year. But really excited about kind of what it looks like moving forward and all of our goals that we have focused on. So that is my spiel. Does anybody have any questions?
Either click on the chat or pass me that to see if there's.
I'm getting nervous. Yeah, Chris, to be honest, I feel like I probably need more information about that situation and everything that happens. And I would love to talk about it offline. I also just want to recommend, if you run into any of those obstacles, it is important that you reach out and we talk about it in real time so that we can help kind of eliminate any barriers to that young person being able to access services and essentially get the support that they need. But yeah, I'd love to connect with you offline to talk about that more and that experience.
I would like to appreciate adding and expanding that list of who's eligible, including the imminent risks.
Yeah.
So, because I think sometimes we don't realize and I'm looking at your mental health numbers and not always being able to make that connection of how being at risk of losing your housing impacts your mental health, and definitely how living unhoused in the community impacts your mental health.
Definitely.
And that, that for some folks, the struggles with their mental health is actually connected to unstably housed or living houseless, and that having stable housing ameliorates and helps a lot with mental health recovery.
100%. Yeah. It's been an important change for us, for sure.
And I think that change is because HUD is willing to be very flexible with their youth programming. And that's been, a game changer. The level of flexibility that HUD has brought to their youth programming and funding is incredible, really, compared to their adult homelessness funding and system. And so we're hopeful that the flexibility will follow in the adult system. And who knows with the new administration.
Well, I'm just excited that we're collecting the data that shows that it works. So, thank you. All right, and with that, we are going to turn it over to sanctuary status. And Commissioner Farr, I'll let you start, and then you can turn it over to Mayor Knudsen at any time.
Thank you, and thanks for including this as a part of the agenda. Lane County is currently working on an ongoing basis on how to provide safe sanctuary for people in Lane County, both people of color and people of LGBTQA2S+, in a number of areas. No small issue is the potential of a drying up, so to speak, of medications, for gender-affirming medications and other medications for people who are currently in process with medication. There's a chance that there's a probability that the federal government will reduce the supply of that or eliminate the supply. And we're working on how do we maintain stockpiles in Lane County to make sure that we're able to provide medication to people as needed through our community health centers. Now, that's just one issue. We had a presentation on Tuesday from Johanna Costas, and the presentation was specifically about the state of Oregon's sanctuary statutes, and what does that mean, and what will it mean on an ongoing basis. The next discussion that we're going to have is specifically how can we at Lane County not just adhere to the state laws, and they are laws, but actually enhance them in a way that we in Lane County can be a leader in sanctuary status for people who are currently living here and need to be protected from potential changes in availability and status. I'll go a little bit into the details. Lane County has a history of action, and we're going to be covering what that history of action has been and how can we ensure that action that we have declared will continue even after January 20th of this year. We have, at this point, we have unanimous support on the board. The next step is that we'll have a series. The first meeting that we had on Tuesday was state sanctuary status. The next two meetings will be to determine county's current status and then how we can enhance the way we're able to respond as county government. Once again, we are an arm of the state of Oregon. County governments are in the West at least, and in doing that, we are obligated to uphold state laws. Now, Captain Rice was present on Tuesday. Now, if you don't know Captain Rice, he's the jail commandant, and he discussed the Oregon laws regarding requests from ICE and other agencies that Lane County, that are public safety, that they either cooperate or provide information to them. He is adamant, always has been and always will be, that the Lane County Jail and the Lane County Sheriff's Department obeys Oregon laws and not, and Oregon laws specifically prohibit coordination and cooperation with ICE. There are a lot of details in the package that we received on Tuesday. So the discussion's ongoing. It's going to require a lot of input, and we're receiving a lot of input at this point in time. The next meeting on this will be on I believe it's the 28th of January. And then we will have a continuation of meetings through the month of February to determine how we in Lane County can coordinate and cooperate with the cities, of course, to make certain that we as an arm of the state of Oregon are able to provide safety and the feeling of safety for people who live here in Lane County. So that's a very quick brief. I can go into Oregon's sanctuary laws. They're all online, and I can send, James, I can send you links to that. We also have links that are in our last agenda packet. But just a reassurance that Lane County has it at the forefront. We understand the imminence of the issue, and we are placing it on a fast track as far as the conversation at the Board of Commissioners level is concerned. So with that, I'll ask, is there any questions around? And also encourage both written testimony and any other input that you may have from me or other county commissioners. I will state that I'll give you an example. I serve as a liaison to the Mental Health Advisory Committee, which is also the local drug and alcohol policy and developmentally disabled committee. Yesterday, they wrote a letter to the Board of County Commissioners encouraging the exact actions that we're talking about. And if I have a copy of that letter, James, I'll send that to you. It's not being actually delivered to the Board of County Commissioners yet, but it's in my hands. And it's also in the process of being delivered. And sorry, I'm fumbling for the actual copy of the letter, but I have a written copy of the letter here. It's also in electronic form. So that being said, much of the work that we do on the PHB revolves around making sure we have services available for everybody. That's the way it's going to be as long as we can provide that in Lane County. So any questions or comments? Excuse me. Heather, you're saying when is the meeting and is oral testimony will be allowed. There'll be at least during the public comment period, which is the first item on the agenda typically in board meetings. There may actually be a public hearing on this at some point. That's not been scheduled yet.
And I'm so sorry, what was the date and time of that meeting?
It's not actually on the agenda yet. Let's see, I'm trying to calculate in my brain what whatever the Tuesday is, 30th of January, is that a Tuesday?
No, 28th.
28th, thank you. I had it right the first time. So the 28th of January, I'm anticipating that it will be. We'll have that published by Thursday of next week, the exact date on that. And
awesome, thank you.
We'll be doing that. Absolutely.
Usually the public testimony starts right at the beginning at 9 a.m.
Yes. Always it starts at 9 a.m. unless there's a employee recognition or some other thing in front of that, which isn't always the case. But sometime 9 a.m. or shortly after, unless there is a separate public hearing, we do, unlike the city of Eugene, we do allow testimony in public comment to be the same as testimony in a public hearing. Thank you, Chair. That's all I have. Please let me know. You have my address if you need any information, and I will forward to James, who can send more information by a link out to the rest of the board. Thanks.
And Mayor Knutson, you wanted to add specifically about the city of Eugene?
I'm happy to. Thank you for that update, Commissioner Farr. And also thank you all for the opportunity to just share a little bit about the city of Eugene's work over many, many years and to give me this opportunity to reaffirm our city's commitment to being a place where everyone feels valued and safe. This commitment is grounded in ordinances and resolutions that have been adopted by our city council, as I mentioned, over a number of years in support of both individual rights and also in opposition to hate. So to highlight two different sort of categories of protections, series of protections put in place related to immigrant communities. Resolution 5174 stated that we as a city are committed to being a welcoming, inclusive, and safe community for everyone. Resolution 5073 also established a supportive statement of principles for immigrant integration. But importantly, and in 2017, the Eugene City Council unanimously passed the Protection for Individuals Ordinance, which is ordinance number 20579 or 20579, adding to Eugene Code 2.495, which established in ordinance protections for all Eugene residents, including immigrants. And this action put provisions into city code preventing the use of city resources, including money, equipment, or personnel, including from the Eugene Police Department, to detect or apprehend individuals whose only violation of the law is that they are present in the United States in violation of federal immigration laws. This ordinance is not dependent on state law, but state law does also generally prohibit inquiry or collection of someone's immigration status or citizenship status, country of birth, with only a few specific exceptions. Eugene Code 2.497 also prohibits city employees from collecting or maintaining individually identifiable immigration status, except for in specific circumstances. And the Eugene Police Department has had and will continue to have a prohibition on using its resources, whether personnel or other, for immigration or customs enforcement efforts. I spoke at our Spanish-speaking community resource fair with Chief Skinner and former Mayor Venice a couple of months ago at North Eugene, and we all spoke clearly to that detail. Lots of questions about that in the community. Relative to our protections of our transgender neighbors and communities, Eugene Human Rights Code includes protections based on many different classifications, including sexual orientation, which is defined to include gender identity in that code, and the city's bias crime, which is EC 4.731, makes it a separate offense to commit certain crimes based on another person's perceived gender identity, as well as other listed status. The council recently amended EC 4.731 to add a person's unhoused status to the bias crime umbrella. I could add more detail, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions if there are any, or also gather more information for this group and people who are listening, but an important opportunity to reaffirm those ordinances, resolutions, and the values held by the community that put them in place.
Thank you, Mayor Knudsen. That was a wonderful follow-up, and you cited specific ordinances with the city of Eugene. Lane County has similar ordinances, and the state and local law. I'm reading under the Sanctuary Promise Act, what we are required to abide by state and local law. State and law enforcement with public agencies do not participate in federal immigration enforcement with that activities unless there is a judicial warrant. That's the same for cities as well as counties. Any public safety agency. And we're also prohibited from inquiring about or storing information regarding to immigration status. So we're going to adhere to that. And we have a board of commissioners that has stated its intention to do so. So Mayor Knudsen, what a wonderful first step on the job to provide this coordination between the city of Eugene and the county. I know Springfield and Mayor Van Gordon may have left for a while, but he may be back with us.
He'll be next.
So I'll turn it over to Mayor Van Gordon, because the two large cities in Lane County is where much of every activity occurs here, but it's not limited solely to the two cities. It goes all the way from the top of the Three Sisters, of course, to Cedar Head Lighthouse and everything in between. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Van Gordon.
And I think understanding that this is a huge issue for folks right now, and it's perpetuating a lot of concern and fear and angst and anxiety and any number of feelings. And I just want to take a second to acknowledge that. Also to note that we, in Springfield, we are continuing to monitor the situation that the county's going through, right? Because they're taking testimony, and anytime people talk about public testimony, it's always sort of helpful to listen to the broader conversation. But more importantly, there's a lot of conversation about state law here, and there's the state law is, like the city of Springfield is compliant with state law, but the state law really is the thing that is protecting folks here. It's really the thing that is driving that conversation, where local and state law enforcement cannot, be used to enforce immigration rules, except if there's a warrant involved. And I learned a lot about the state law about the details of it when I watched the county's work session about it. And if you want to learn more, it is worth listening to what the county did this week, and they just have a good explainer about it. But I just want to make sure everybody hears from all three jurisdictions that yes, everybody's concerned, and right now in the state of Oregon, right, we are under a state law that really is protecting law enforcement from being used to enforce immigration rules. And most importantly, and this is I think really important to me, is that if people are victims of crimes, they need to report them to law enforcement, regardless of their immigration status. If they are witnesses to crimes, they need to report them to law enforcement, regardless of immigration status. And frankly, integrate with or interact with our other like fire and ambulance and any other public safety organization, because those organizations are here to keep the entire community safe.
Mayor Van Gordon.
If I may just offer a quick summary, and I think this goes for all jurisdictions, Lane County, in response to the significant public support for declaring Lane County a sanctuary for both immigrants and the transgender community, the Board of Commissioners reaffirms its dedication to ensuring full compliance with the Sanctuary Promise Act and to promising a safe and inclusive environment for all residents.
Thank you, everyone, for that. And I know as the chair, I've always talked about transparency and what the Poverty and Homelessness Board has control over and does not have control over, and where we'll get more information. And so we've had a little discussion earlier throughout this meeting about there's the county, and then there's municipalities and cities and how they all work together. And so the Poverty and Homelessness Board wants to work with the county and municipalities to make sure information goes out. So thank you to both mayors for giving us some feedback on this topic. But the other piece as well is if people have concerns in regards to municipalities, that we will get information of where you can voice your concerns. So, and how to move that forward if you have concerns about specific things that are going on in your community. So, because the Poverty and Homelessness Board doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction of what happens in cities, but we can say and get information for folks of, like Mayor Van Gordon was saying, of who to report that to, what meetings and places to go to express your concerns or your desires of what you would like to see, not only within the county, but within the community that you live. And so we will definitely work on that. And thanks to the three of you for providing us with some of that information of where community members can go and what the laws are.
May I add just one addendum to that? There is one agency that does have jurisdiction over everything inside of the county lines, and that is the Board of Health. The Lane County Board of Commissioners serves as the Board of Health, and we can write ordinances as the Board of Health, which do apply inside city limits as well as outside city limits. Why is that important? The immigrant and LGBTQ IA2S plus communities face heightened mental health risks and physical health risks due to discrimination, trauma, and fear of deportation, leading to higher rates of PSDT, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, all health-related issues. So the Board of Health can adopt ordinances surrounding health issues.
Thank you for that clarification. And with that, we will, if we don't have any other comments from the executive team, we'll move on to James with the strategic plan update.
All right, thank you, everyone. As I get this set up, I'm sharing the same PowerPoint Kirsten was using. So yeah, to provide an update on where we're at with strategic planning, as those of you who have been, which is most of you have been actively involved in this process, you may have remembered that Brittany Manzo, the consultant that we've been working with to develop the strategic plan, had set a goal, a date of today, actually, to have her draft of the strategic plan to present to us. Unfortunately, Brittany has had some family emergencies that have happened as of late, which has pushed that, understandably pushed that deadline back a bit. So she has asked that she have until the end of January to submit that. And of course, we are happy to accommodate that so she can address her family challenges right now. So the plan is that sorry, did I just say the 31st? I shouldn't have if I did. The plan is that she has set for herself is to have her draft submitted no later than Monday, January 27th. Our current plan, which we're seeking feedback on from this group, is to have the same work group that convened previously. So a work group made up of PHB membership that was focused on reviewing where Brittany was and the progress she had made and some of her initial drafting. That same group would reconvene the week of February 3rd to review her final draft. And that work group would then work to provide recommendations to the full PHB membership at the February 20th meeting. We then have had some conversations around, potentially an open house type event that we open up to the public to allow folks to come and engage with PHB members, with Brittany herself around the PHB plan, to seek even further input and to really just make sure that we are communicating out to the community the intent of the strategic plan and how we want to move it forward. So happy to take any questions, any concerns, if there's particular feedback around how the work group is gonna review this and how the full membership wants to be involved. Happy to hear those suggestions as well. Yeah, Mayor Knudsen, go ahead.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you for this update. I'm really looking forward to seeing what feels a bit like a river delta moment with a lot of information that this board has been working with, as I understand it, for a number of months or years. And I guess my question is maybe requesting a little bit of a clarification. So as I understand it, there is a lot that is being braided together into this draft submittal that will be ready on the 27th of January. And then the work group will be convening to review on the 3rd. We'll be able to give feedback to that draft, and then those recommendations will be coming to the full Poverty and Homeless Board membership on February 20th. I'm just wondering if we need to at least plan for in our calendars one more touch point, either most likely perhaps after that February 20th meeting, depending on how much feedback is gathered, just to have a review point, I would think, with the work group after the full membership has had a chance to review the draft, if there are any additional adjustments that get made. So it's really a process question for you, and also educational for me in terms of understanding how we work through collection of information into a draft, review of that draft, changes and adjustments made, and then working towards a final that I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in from the community.
Yeah, I mean, I would defer to the PHB members to weigh in on that suggestion. I think it makes sense. I mean, to add some context as to, kind of why we moved to the work group, having eyes on it just didn't feel like it was a good use of time to have the full committee reviewing it in a PHB meeting, and it just felt like having, the smaller group have eyes on it was important. I think if you all come out of the February 20th meeting and feel like there needs to be further work group work on it, I can certainly understand why that would be important, and would be happy to, tentatively schedule another work group. I think everyone can agree we are all eager to see this strategic plan be enacted. And so I think, we want to just make sure that we are getting to that end point as quickly as possible, but also obviously want to make sure we're being incredibly thorough in the process. But I would really defer to our membership as far as, if that's a plan that we want to, or an added step that we want to consider.
Yes. So in my thoughts too, as the chair, because I know we have very robust discussions, as we should, so that we will be able to devote a significant amount of time to the agenda in February to have a discussion about the strategic plan and what the recommendations were from the work group. And then at that point, the full board can have a discussion about where we go from here. So whether that's the work group convening, or we feel like we got enough, and we've also had meetings in between, work group meetings with Brittany in between, where the full board has been invited to come and break down pieces. So in my thoughts, that's where the February meeting would look like. As we start discussing and looking at what the recommendations are, we would develop the next step from there by the end of that meeting. Go ahead, Commissioner Burr.
Thank you, Chair. And Mayor Knudsen, I really am thrilled that you are involved with the Poverty and Homelessness Board and that you're stepping forward to the point you already have. You know, the city of Eugene is integral, and the city of Springfield are also integral in the nature of this board. There is no board like this anyplace else in the state that covers the major jurisdictions and the broad outreach as far as lived experience, et cetera, are concerned. One of the things that we had tried to do and maybe have struggled through the years is how does this board action, how is it translated back to the cities to complement the work of the cities and to also be supplemental to the work of the cities? That's our quest for the future. And tactically, part of what we're doing is making certain that we can give the language that the cities are able to use as well as the members of this board. I said that kind of clumsily. What I'm saying is we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and tactically, I think we're equipped to do the job. And it's just fantastic to see you and Mayor Van Gordon sitting side by side as two of the head members of this committee. So thank you.
Chris, I'm not sure I understand your question. If you're able to come off mute and clarify. If it's related to like a strategic plan goal lining up with county department goals, I think we need to wait until we see the plan, and that would be when we would talk through it. But if I'm misunderstanding, happy to clarify. If you're talking, we can't hear you. If he's here. Not hearing you, Chris. Happy to, if you want to shoot me an email or if you're able to get back in the chat, happy to provide you an answer when I fully understand what you're asking. Well, thank you. So it sounds like, yeah, well, we have steps to move forward. It sounds like there is interest in seeing how the February 20th meeting goes. Yeah. And I will also, relay this to Brittany as she will likely be the person to lead those discussions. So.
Thank you, James. And now we're to jurisdictional updates. So I'm going to go backwards because we started with you, Commissioner Farr, but I'm going to start with Mayor Van Gordon and then go back around.
Because I'm leaving in just a couple of minutes.
Yes,
so.
yeah. Mayor Van Gordon, did you have any additional updates you'd like to give us?
You were muted.
That happens to at least one person a meeting. I'm glad I could be that person that was talking about it. Yeah, so we have a couple of things going on. We've sworn all the new counselors. So if you haven't heard, Counselor Stout has replaced Counselor Pictionary for the Thurston area. So that will be a nice addition to the council. And he's going to take on the G Street Oasis, their Oasis, stakeholder role for the council. And we swore in everybody else who won re-election. January 30th is State of the City. And I believe the home RFP is still kind of an active thing that we're all collectively working on. And I'll get to enjoy being with the new mayor of Eugene on the most exciting committee, which is the Home Consortium.
Thank you, Mayor Van Gordon. Mayor Knudsen?
Thank you, Chair and Mayor Van Gordon. Also delighted to be working with you. A couple of quick updates and some that connect to the Home Consortium work. Maybe starting at the beginning, but what feels like at the caboose. We have already had our State of the City event this past Monday, and swearing in of new City Councilor Eliza Kaczynski, who is new to the Eugene City Council. That occurred on Monday, January 6th. Councilor Kaczynski has worked on the Eugene Budget Committee and on many issues related to housing needs and sustainability in our community for a number of years. So very welcome addition to the council. As a quick jurisdictional update on the work that we are doing, City Council on January 27th has several affordable housing priority goal action items on their agenda. So first is looking at our LRPD program, our property tax exemptions for affordable housing. These are 20-year exemptions for housing at 60% of area median income or below. And we have 2 renewals and 3 new LRPD requests. Together, These LRPT applications would maintain affordable rents for 99 units and support the creation of at least 192 new affordable housing units. So that is exciting work coming to council on the 27th of January. Also, with that discussion, council will be looking at the funding for the home and what we refer to as HARP, but it's Home, ARP, American Rescue Plan projects. Council is considering 2 affordable housing development proposals submitted through that 2024 RFP to process our federal home funds and a special one-time source through the HARP or Home American Rescue Plan funds. We do not have enough funds in Home to fund all 4 site proposals that were submitted. And an evaluation committee reviewed and scored the proposals, and the highest ranked proposals for Home funds and Home American Rescue Plan funds will be considered by council at that meeting on January 27th. And those include the Coleman, which is a project by Homes for Good, working also with sponsors, and the River Road Housing Project by Laurel Hill Center. The Eugene Springfield Home Consortium Governing Board will make the final decision about funding, and the Eugene City Council's recommendations will be what go to that governing board. And that's the end of that update. Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Commissioner Carr.
Thank you. American News, and thanks for that update. That's maybe the most thorough update we've had from the city of Eugene for some time. That's great to hear the initiatives that are not just percolating, but boiling. So thank you. The only thing I'll mention from Lane County is that the Board of Commissioners has 3 employees by charter. One is a county administrator, county counsel, and performance auditor. We've only had 1 employee for quite some time now, which was the county administrator. This week we hired county counsel. So we will have county counsel is coming on board the middle of February. Rob Bovet, who most recently has been working as county counsel in Washington County, previously was the DA of Lincoln County and worked for a lot of years as counsel and a government liaison for Association of Oregon Counties. We're all very excited and unanimous support of Rob Bovet coming on board. The other issue is, you know what? There's no other issue. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carr. And I didn't see, but I just want to be sure, do we have anybody else representing a jurisdiction for an update? I didn't see anyone. Okay. Yeah. All right. With that, and it looks like we are probably going to get out of here a little bit early, but our draft for our all-member agenda for our February all-member draft agenda. Oh, that's you. Sorry, I'm stealing your thunder.
Oh, no, I think either of us can do it. I mean, I think too, in looking at this, largely that meeting, the bulk of that meeting is going to be having Brittany present her final draft. And we talked about too, having kind of a PAC report send off, if you will, as we move into the new. So, looking at some things that were accomplished with the PAC report and some things we still need to, or may want to add to the strategic plan. And then we may have a vote to approve the coordinated written standards, but I think that's likely to get pushed to allow ample time to review the plan. And then just a reminder, if you have chair, vice chair nominations, Chris, I have yours noted, but if other folks want to nominate chair or vice chairs, please send me an email by the end of January. And we may have an update on the new membership, the new seats that Kate mentioned during her presentation. Yes.
So that is our agenda for. I'd like to thank Kirsten for your presentation today, Mayor Knudsen and Mayor Van Gordon. I also want to thank all of the PHB board members who are not a part of the executive team, but who tuned in today to view the meeting and keep abreast of what's going on with the Poverty and Homelessness Board and the updates for the services. So I appreciate that immensely. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone. See you in February.